My pleasure. I am always happy to be a guinea pig for Julie. It's one of the joys of life for me. I'm going to turn the camera on for 2 seconds to let you guys know I'm still alive.
Hi, Jason.
I don't live up there in New Hampshire anymore, but I grew the beard special for this particular conversation today. I brought it back. Because my wife usually makes me keep the goatee because we don't have first day of fall, and there is no fall in Texas. It's just hot and then not quite as hot, and then, oh my God, it is too hot. That's about all we get in Texas at this point. So, so thank you guys all for joining, and what I'm going to ask is for everybody to do the mute thing, if you don't mind. If you have a question, I'll pause periodically to see if anybody has a question, and I'll wait about 5 seconds and then plow on through, because there's nothing more awkward than saying, does everybody have questions, and waiting 30 seconds with nobody having a question. So if you have one, though, feel free to pop it in the chat, and Julie can interrupt me periodically if there is one. So this is the last time I'm actually doing this talk. I'm retiring this talk after this and starting up some new talks in the new year here, but this was the one that Julie picked, and she actually got to see me do this in Chicago just a couple weeks ago. So I am going to be a little scattered tonight, and I'm going to apologize in advance to everybody. The plan, when Julie and I originally planned this, was, I had some foot surgery about 3 weeks ago, and I was going to be home. I was going to be in my little home space, and all was going to be well, and it was going to be great because I could do this remotely for you guys, and I could still feel like I was doing something community because I couldn't be at, all these cool events that are going on, and I wasn't coming up to New England this winter to come and see you guys. And then, unfortunately, we had a death in the family on New Year's Day, so I'm actually in a Home 2 Suites in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So hopefully I keep good internet. If I get breaky or anything like that, please, somebody let me know, and I'll take a pause. But so I'm running single monitor here, so I don't know what the next slide's going to be when we poke in. So here we go. Let's just dive right in. So this is me, for those of you who don't remember me. I'm Jason Himmelstein. I used to run the SharePoint user group there in New Hampshire with Jim and Chris, and then I ditched town, and Julie was kind enough to step in. But I am the technical strategy director at Rackspace. For those of you wondering, that is not what Texas looks like. That is me in New Zealand. Part of the reason why I left living up in New England was to move to San Antonio to go take this awesome gig that I get to travel the world, sharing the good word of SharePoint and all things business intelligence and all sorts of cool stuff for Rackspace. And I'm actually returning down under here shortly, but it's one of the great things I get to do is travel around and get to interact with people and hear their problems and try and help solve them. I'm also an Office Servers and Services MVP. You can email me any questions you have, and I'll probably forward them to John White and make him answer them, just because that's a lot of fun for me, because John and I do a podcast together. But you can follow my blog, which has nothing new on it right now, but there's about a dozen articles that I figured writing things on painkillers was probably a bad idea. I don't know why I thought I was going to do a whole bunch of work at the end of the year, but that didn't get to happen. So like Julie and I were talking, blogging's hard sometimes, guys. But I have about a dozen articles that I keep meaning to post. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm very involved in a bunch of really cool things that are all happening in the first half of this year. And I've been tweeting a little bit about some of them, not just the fact that the Jaguars are in the playoffs for the first time since 2007. You can also follow bifocal.show is my podcast with John White. We talk about business intelligence every week. We published our New Year's podcast on Wednesday, which was yesterday, now I'm just realizing. So you can go ahead and take a listen to that. We cover the news, and we do some interviews and all sorts of good stuff on BI, and we try to keep it to 30 minutes. So it's a good sitting in a blizzard, driving along type of listen if you're trying to catch up on what's happening new in the Power BI world and other things, Microsoft and business intelligence. So here's the agenda for this conversation. I'm going to flow through pretty quickly some of these top 3 or 4 areas because analytically shiny and new, well, inside of the SharePoint space, 'cause this is a SharePoint user group, honestly, guys, there's not a whole lot of shiny and new happening. There's a lot of deprecated, a lot of things going away, a lot of things that they've moved our cheese. And it's important to know where those things are and what some of these really awesome new things are as well. So this talk is meant to highlight, things that you may think are still going to be around for 2019 that are likely not going to be. And then the goal is to get bored with slides after about 20 minutes and then spend the last half hour just whacking out some demo and doing some cool stuff with SharePoint Online and Power BI and some actually, Power BI report server as well. So hopefully that works for you guys. If not, I won't be offended if you decide to go, drive down the highway right now and go get lost in the snow. I won't mind, but I'm kidding. Don't do that. That'd be bad. So here we go. I'm going to whack into some Excel services. So for those of you who don't know, Excel services in 2016 went away. This was a big workload that we looked at SharePoint for specifically and said, hey, that's our dashboard technology. It's Excel services. That's what we're going to use. And a lot of people were leveraging it pretty heavy duty. And when this first came out, I was at, when they first made this big announcement, I was at SPTechCon in Boston, and Jen Mason came running up to my room because she had just finished doing a session where people had asked her about this, even though it had nothing to do with her topic. She's like, you're about to get accosted and hounded. And I started looking at it and I went, this is not a bad thing. Excel services isn't a SharePoint native thing. Why are we stuffing it in here? This belongs over where they've put it, which is in Office Web Apps, which they renamed to be Office Online Server. So what they did, the way that I like to describe it is SharePoint in 2007 was, sort of me now. I'm a little bit heavy, but it's the new year, so I'm going on a weight loss program. And SharePoint in 2013, got a little bit leaner. They deprecated a couple things, but in 2016, it kind of got its groove back, and it shed a whole bunch of stuff. And Excel services was a big workload that it was able to get rid of. It was one of those things that we spun up app servers specifically for the purpose of running Excel services. We no longer have to do that. Excel services moved out, and it went over, by the way, for any of you Douglas Adams fans, we throw a little don't panic in here, but Excel in 2013, the way that the world was built was Excel services went out and grabbed data out of all these other data sources and helped keep it refreshed using Power Pivot for SharePoint and Analysis Services mode Power Pivot for SharePoint. So that's how we kept models updated, and we passed everything back up through SharePoint. And we had Office on web apps. And that was sort of doing a rendering, but we had to go in and tell it, tell the WAPI bindings, ignore this type of workbook. So we didn't leverage the Office Web App Server the way that we should have. So in 2016, we completely changed that world. And what we said was, we're going to visualize all Excel in Office Online Server, and we're going to be able to pull and do refresh through that Office Online Server tier. Now, in 2013 and previous, we had to run Office Web Apps on a SharePoint server. In 2016, we can't. So Office Online Server has to be installed on its own servers because it has conflicting DLLs, and you can't actually run it on the same server. When we got to Service Pack 1 for 2013, we were able to do this in 2013, but you can't run Office Online Server on a SharePoint box at this point. So that's something that's important to know. And the way that we keep those models refreshed and being able to use Power View is using Analysis Services 2016 in Power Pivot mode. So we still have that Analysis Services world, but Office Online Server is actually able to talk to it and is doing all of that for us. And the Power Pivot for SharePoint service application that you see is just for management. That's all that it's there for. So we're actually able to do all that refresh model, and it got a lot cleaner. I don't know if you noticed the number of lines, the number of things just got a lot simpler. So the benefits here is it's single architecture. It's feature for Excel rendering That's what it's doing. Office Online Server, that's its purpose. No longer are we impacting performance on the SharePoint tier. It also changes the licensing concern, because this was something that when we were dealing with Excel, it was something that drove a lot of people to Enterprise Edition. Okay, and with the Office Online Server, there's a whole different licensing concern around Office Online Server. And again, there's Office Online and Office Online Server. The word server makes it on-prem, not cloud-based. Microsoft did a horrible job in naming this sucker, but that's just the reality. So the Office Online Server leverages the CALs for on-prem Office Pro Plus, okay? And you likely already have Office Online Server if you're an on-prem customer, because Exchange leverages it and Skype for Business leverages it. So if you're using one of those two technologies, likely you already have an Office Online Server implementation in your environment. You just need to go find out where it is, find out if it will take the load that you have. If not, beef up that implementation, because it is a web farm. Unlike a SharePoint farm, it is a flat topology, but you can add servers into that web farm and handle that through standard load balancing, whether through NLB or being done through an F5 or any type of hardware load balancer. So one of the really big benefits to this is this means that Excel is no longer locked into the same cadence of update as SharePoint. So we can update Office Online Server in a different cadence from SharePoint. So while Microsoft still releases Office Online Server and SharePoint CUs about the same time, every 2 months, doesn't mean you have to implement every CU in SharePoint. But if you're going to go ahead and implement an Office Online Server patch, you may as well implement the CU at the same time, because you're going to take that downtime. The benefit here is that you're not dealing with that same level. So you can actually go ahead and spin up a brand new Office Online Server, and add it into the web farm, remove Office Online Servers, and dealing with it through the WAPI bindings. Everything can be seamless to the user. They don't actually experience any downtime if you do it right. So that's just one of the benefits. From an implication perspective, there is complexity that gets added to this. It means that you're going to be dealing with Kerberos because you are adding a hop. So Kerberos is something that's not going away for on-prem. If you're doing anything on-prem, you are going to have to implement Kerberos. It's just a way of life at this point. It's going to be a thing. There is no GUI for Office Online Server. It's PowerShell only, and it does require, as I said, a separate server. There are a couple of things that were deprecated, but you do get the Excel web parts. They have to be added manually into your SharePoint farm still, actually now, and PowerView does require SSRS integrated mode, and that's an important thing to note, because I'm going to tell you some bad things about SSRS integrated mode here in a few minutes. So from a deprecated changed features perspective, we lose the shared data connection library, which some people were reliant on. This was not a great thing. There is an option for a data connections library, but it's not shared. It is specific. There's no more unattended service account. You lose some throttling capability inside of this tier, but you get other capabilities around Office Online Server around throttling as well. So something important to note is that the IT management dashboard is no longer in central administration, and that IT management dashboard for Excel services does require server-to-server trust. So that's just something you have to have set up. Couple of other things I mentioned. Kerberos is going to be a thing you're going to have to set up in order to make this stuff run. The claims to Windows token service now runs on the Office Online Server machine, and you are going to use, analysis services is going to do a trust to Office Online Server in order to use effective username, which eliminates some of the hop issues, but still, it's just Kerberos is a thing you're going to have to get used to. From a new features perspective, Power Query Refresh shows up in Power Pivot for SharePoint. It's not in 2016, but it does show up in 2019. And the Excel 2016 data model is supported, which was new. Data model editing support is there. There's an Excel JavaScript API that's supported, and you do get closer parity with Excel 2016 by using these Office Online servers. Office Online Server. So a couple of things about this from an authentication settings perspective. You are going to have to go in and do some tweaking. You're going to use the authenticated user settings as opposed to going with the unattended service account, different things like that. To enable the Excel services functions, you are going to have to run this WAPI binding. WAPI is my absolute favorite binding name of all time. It's the Web Open Protocol interface, I believe is what the I stands for. But you know, it allows us to actually bind Excel services to the Office Online Server. The OOST server name there is the one that you would change, but this is actually the code that you would run in order to add Excel services capabilities into a SharePoint 2016 farm. So doing the installation for PowerPivot for SharePoint, the service application and analysis services are now a completely separate install. You have to do them on their own. Analysis services instance is now referred to as Power Pivot mode, which it wasn't before, and you can instance name them as well. So a couple of changes to the Excel 2016 client. This was one of those things that really just annoys the crap out of me. For those of you who are using Office 2016, you probably, if you're doing anything with Excel, you're probably noticing these things. Microsoft is trying to move us away from the old way of doing things in Excel and move us more towards the Power BI desktop world. So they changed some of the names. Power Query became Get and Transform. The most useful Google string that you could possibly come up with, Get and Transform. Power View is still Power View, but you have to go find it, and every time Office updates, it goes and hides it again on you. Which is not fun. Power Pivot became Managed Data Model, and Power Maps became 3D Maps, and they stopped doing anything with it. So Power View, unfortunately, still has a Silverlight dependency, even though Microsoft said they were going to rewrite the whole thing. What they did was they rewrote it. They realized it wasn't the way they wanted to go. They put it out there for us as a preview, and then they ditched it completely. And they said, you know what, we're not going to support this. We're moving away from Power View completely. The way in the light is now Power BI. So that's what they decided to go forward with, and they ditched it completely. So Power View's future, let's just be honest. Power View has no future. It's Silverlight dependent. It requires SSRS integrated mode, which, by the way, that's gone in SQL Server 2017. There is no more SSRS integrated mode. So this is a technology that Microsoft, while they didn't come out and go, hey, we're going to stop doing this, they said they're going to stop doing it by stopping doing all of the dependent technologies. So they hit it from the ribbon in Excel 2016. It's just something that we shouldn't bother to do anymore, which is really sad because I love Power View. So while it's not dead yet, it will be very, very, very soon. It's still something you can do. So, you know, if you're doing it and you're being successful with it, I wouldn't invest tons into it, but stay the course if you are using it already and you have reliance on it, but start taking a look into what the next thing is so you can start a plan to move away from it. So, speaking of things that are dead, anybody use performance point services? Yeah, that's what I thought. You're all on mute, so I'm going to assume that the answer was no. What's new for Performance Point 2016 is that it's still there. It still exists for now. There are other products that still exist, Silverlight, ActiveX, InfoPath, SharePoint Designer. When you get lumped into a group like that, expect that it's time to go away. If you're a fan of the show Silicon Valley, this may look familiar. Basically, it's still on the payroll, but its job is to go sit on the roof and just stay out of everybody's way. If you are doing Performance Point, unlike Power View is a short-lived report type of a thing, and there's a clean migration path out of it. If you're doing Performance Point, you need to start planning now to move away from it because it is not going to be around in the future. From a reporting platform's perspective, by the way, I'll take a pause here and see. I think maybe somebody had a question. Crickets. No, crickets. Wow, we have a few more folks who showed up. How about that? Does anybody have a question? I will give you a couple seconds to come off mute, and then I'm going to keep on going. 2, 1, and all right. So when it comes to reporting platforms, reporting services, Microsoft had this event called The Box is Back in October of 2015. And the direct quote was, reporting services is our on-premises solution for BI report delivery. The thing that they didn't say at that point was that Power BI is their cloud solution for BI report delivery. Okay? And that realistically is what it is. If you take a look at what they've done with reporting services, they have gone off and said, we want to make sure that what you can do on-prem, you can do in the cloud. They're not quite there yet. And we want to make sure that what you can do in the cloud, you can do on-prem. And they're getting pretty close. So there are 4 types of reports that Microsoft talks about because they line up with 4 different products that they have. They have paginated, interactive, mobile, and analytical. And realistically, they get lumped into 2 categories. You have paginated, which are the classic RDL reports. Think green and white ribboned paper where, dot matrix printed out, massive reams. Think NASA in the 1960s. Okay, that's what we're talking about, paginated reports. You want to be able to print it, that's a paginated report. Anything else is going to be something that is more interactive, something that you want to be able to work with, you want to drill into, you want to actually have at your fingertips, and you want to be able to interact and do something with that data. For me, mobile and analytical data is interactive as well. Power BI is really the way that we accomplish that, though. So whether it's through Power BI Mobile, and there's a mobile app that you use on the iPad, and you can actually render the mobile in web browser as well. But you are using the RS Mobile capability through the app for the most part. It exists on iPad and iPhone, Android. Jim, I don't know if Windows Phone still exists. I'm going to assume so. So I'm going to say probably there's a Windows Phone app for it as well, but maybe not. And then there are analytical reports as well, which are Excel reports. So as we look through this, there are 3 different ways that Microsoft is trying to give us the ability to do reporting. The middle one's the one that we've talked about most so far, which is Excel Services, and Excel Online Server. With that, that's really our analytical realm. That's how that's getting rendered. Power BI is doing everything but paginated reports. And historically, we've dealt with SQL Server reporting services, which there is a mobile view of now, which you're going to use the same Power BI Power BI app in order to do that, and you're going to do paginated reports. Okay, but Microsoft wanted to radically change how they're doing things, and that's why there are whales on this slide, because whales are radical changers. Yeah, I don't know why I use whales for that slide. I think John picked that slide. He took that picture, so, So SSRS is the still got its groove back product of Microsoft for 2016 and 2017. They brought out so much great stuff in this particular space that it really was a boogie down kind of a moment. The report designers, they got better. You can use SQL Server Data Tools or Report Builder. Still a click once app, which is really nice. Native mode versus SharePoint integrated mode I'm going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about some of the report viewer web parts as well. So some of the new features, you get tree maps and sunburst chart types for SSRS. Now, if that doesn't get anybody excited, you're doing the wrong business, man, because those 2 things alone, no, I'm just kidding. Those are 2 things that were brought forward as new features with SSRS 2016. But the things that really rang big for me, they completely rewrote the back-end engine. It's now an HTML5-based rendering engine. We have a completely redesigned web portal. It no longer looks like something that was written in 2003, because that's about when it was written. And you now get PDF for printing instead of ActiveX. So for anybody who is wondering, is this something that's going to be real? Yeah, they've rewritten the back end completely so that it actually is a modern tool. And this is where they're investing tons and tons of money. PowerPoint rendering and export to PowerPoint out of SSRS reports is a really huge one, because you can never walk into an executive's office and say, let me open up the SSRS portal and show this to you. They always want to see that fancy PowerPoint slide that you're, like I'm sharing with you guys right now. Also, the ability to go ahead and pin a Power BI dashboard, pin a report to a Power BI dashboard if you have the on-prem data gateway set up. So this is all native mode stuff. Now, they did give us with SSRS 2016 an integrated mode for SharePoint. But what they gave us was kind of a crappy chop down, here you go, we're not going to invest a ton in this thing. Now, the great thing, tree map sunburst charts, they are available for SharePoint integrated mode, folks. So that, I know you're all cheering behind the mute button. But the big things here, the HTML5 based rendering engine, so it does show up in HTML5. We do get the new report builder, but all they brought forward other than that was getting things out of integrated mode. So printing and export to PowerPoint. So that was a clear indication that integrated mode was going to go away. And then they came out and said, integrated mode is going away. We are going to go forward with native mode only. There is a page viewer web part for native mode to be able to render into SharePoint. And SharePoint lists are going to be able to be used as a data source, so that's really great. And you can still have report delivery from native, or you can from native mode into SharePoint document libraries, which is great. So all of that to come back and say, well, right now the web part kind of sucks. It's been bad. It's been around since 2007 R2. It's officially deprecated at this point, and they're going to bring forward a new native mode web part for 2017. Okay, which they released in August of 2017. It now has full fidelity, and it requires, kind of requires Kerberos. Better to set up Kerberos, just so you know, better to do that. But we do have the ability to go in and set it up and use a, this native mode report server web part. Any questions on that? Because that, I know, is kind of a bombshell for some folks. Hearing crickets again, so I'm just going to keep on blazing through because I want to get some cool demos.
They're overwhelmed.
I'm telling you, I hear the snoring from here all the way in Baton Rouge.
It's good stuff, Jace.
Yeah. So, Julie, I do this stuff just to my kids, so it's not like I'm going to be offended if everybody's sleeping on the other end. They usually are. So, Power BI Report Server is the big hotness for 2017. With the release of SQL Server 2017, Microsoft brought forward something completely different and new called Power BI Report Server. It is a lightweight standalone installer. It is not a part of SQL Server. It is not SSRS. It is a superset of SSRS. So SQL Server Reporting Services is a part of SQL Server, even though it too is a separate install. But Power BI Report Server is a superset. It layers on top of SSRS. So if you are standing up a SQL Server 2017 instance, and you're going to stand up SQL Server Reporting Services for 2017, and you have rights to Power BI Report Server through either your EA or because you have bought premium capacity for Power BI, you don't need to bother with SSRS. You just want to install PBIRS, or Power BI Report Server. You'll hear me refer to it that way because we love acronyms. One of the great things about this is it actually does render Excel also. So I'm going to show this to you. I'm going to demo it for you as well. But with this, the cool thing that happens is Power BI, for a really long time, we've been hearing you can't do that on-prem. Well, now you can do more on-prem than you can in Power BI because you still can't do a paginated report in Power BI. So all of the cool stuff that you can do in Power BI, you can now do in PBIRS. Now, this is something that they sort of leapfrog each other periodically because Power BI Report Server has to roll up all of the things that Power BI is doing and bring it back on-prem. And there are some capabilities that are not quite there, but for the most part, you are dealing with a superset of those reports, and it's really cool stuff. Now, the Power BI service itself, the goal of Power BI was Microsoft saying, we want to get from 5 minutes to wow. How do we make it so we put something in the hands of a user and they get from a blank canvas to actually having something that they can see their data and do something, make intelligent business decisions, hence business intelligence, in 5 minutes. Now, it's not going to mean that it's necessarily super deep, but it's the beginnings of it. So you have a separate design canvas from how you're going to consume it. So there are two different ways of dealing with this. You have browser as a client, you have a mobile app as a client, and then you have a designer app, okay, which is called Power BI Desktop. And then there's another technology called the on-premises data gateway, which actually is leveraged not just for Power BI, but Power Apps and Flow leverages this as well, which acts as a queuing system to be able to pull things from an on-prem data source and be able to surface that in the cloud through reports. So, you know what? Anybody bored with slides? I'm kind of bored with slides.
Yes, please. Demo.
Let's see if I can do some demo here. I want to show you a couple quick things though, because those two slides are really, really dull. I want to share this with you because just want to show you the difference between things that I'm going to talk about here. From a reports perspective, this is a report, okay? This is a dashboard. This is an Excel workbook. This is a dashboard. This is a report. This is a dashboard. This is a dashboard. This is me being a user right now. Your users, or you as a user, may look at these things and go, but that's a dashboard. It doesn't really matter what it's called. There are a couple of things that are important to understand. I'm going to show you that here in just a second. I just wanted to share with you, this is a dashboard. The reason why we call it a dashboard is because we can pin multiple elements from different reports to it, and we're able to visualize that in one place. A report is a single set of capability being surfaced, a single set of data being surfaced in one place. Okay, but it only can come from its own set of data sources, whereas a dashboard can be surfaced from a new number of different data sources.
Hey, Jason?
Does that make any sense? Yes.
Is there any implied interactivity between the components of a report versus dashboard? Like if I click on a node in the stacked bar chart in a report, the rest of the report changes to just show that month, right?
Why, Doctor, thank you for asking that really great question. A dashboard visually is going to take you to the report when you click on it. You're not going to be able to interact with the dashboard in the same way you can with a report. So I'm going to show you guys that here in just 1 second. But thank you, Dr. Gilronan, for your phenomenal question.
Thanks, dude. Hi.
Hi. So, all right, let's go down here. I'm just going to make sure that there are, okay, cool. So I'm going to come in here. And let's take a look. This is Power BI. It is really important to have an understanding of the separation and the wall between Power BI and Office 365. They are both cloud services. They are both Microsoft. They are both backed by the same authentication provider, being Azure Active Directory. But they are completely separate entities. They have interaction, and they have the graph capability to be able to go in and pull data behind the scenes, but they are completely separate entities. Even though this little waffle guy up here in the left-hand corner is going to show me all of my Office 365 stuff, and if I go into Office 365 over here, and I take a look at a page, just going to grab a page, I will be able to find in my All Apps, Power BI shows up in here, okay? It's a little bit confusing, but it's important to understand that Power BI, you can have Power BI without having Office 365. And just because you have Office 365 does not mean you have to have Power BI. Just a little thing. So, for my purposes though, I want to show you guys a couple of things. Here you will see, you know what, I'm going to start over here. I don't want that chart. Let me grab the right file in Excel. So, as I mentioned, guys, I work at Rackspace, and I had a team of people who were working for me for a long time, and we do something called managed services. And the reason why I tell you this story is because, you know, I'm a builder. I like to create things. I like to make things overly complicated because I'm a SharePoint person, let's be honest. And for me, I wanted to build for my team a reporting mechanism where they could tell me how things are going with a customer. What stage are they in? What's their health? You know, I wanted to be able to tell a whole bunch of different things from this set of reports. And, you know, I'm an old Silverlight developer at heart. I was like, hey, I can go build you a web app, or I can do all this, you know, I can build you a SharePoint list with a custom, you know, Power App on top of it, and you guys can go in and enter your data every day and or once a week or whatever it is. And they finally came to me and said, can't we just use Excel? I went, all right, well, it's kind of boring, but yeah, we can. And from this Excel sheet, I wanted to be able to see a whole bunch of information. So here I have the name of the customer. By the way, none of these, unfortunately, are actual customers of Rackspace. I have been courting Dynaco, been trying to get out to a race, but they still just won't sign with us. They are heavy Office 365 users, though. So just so you know, I'm not sharing any of this stuff. And Lilu Dallas is a dream employee, but you know, bygones. So my team would come in and be able to enter in when we got a new customer who joined. Let me make sure here. Thank you. When somebody would sign up for our service, the information would manually get entered here. And when a change in the state would happen, somebody would come in, they'd change the state simply by typing. They could take a look at what other states are here. Very, very simple. You know, how much were we making per month? When was the last time they talked to them? And what are some of the notes? But I needed the ability to go in and report on this, and I couldn't do it from a flat Excel sheet. So I decided that Power BI was my way of doing that. This is the report that sits on top of that Excel sheet. This gets looked at by, you know, not this version, obviously, but the Rackspace version, gets looked at on a daily basis by the executives who run our business unit. They wanted to be able to take a look and see how many customers do we have? Have we increased seats or lost seats? Where are we on monthly recurring revenue? And what's our annual revenue to date? So those are really the big things that they cared about. They don't actually care about what the customer phases are or things like that. But for me, I like to come here and I like to see how many customers are in what phase. And I want to see, you know, how many customers does a technical account manager have? Things like that. So for me, this was a really important set of charts, but for an executive, not as much. So I'm going to take a look, and I'm actually going to tell Skype that I'm busy because Mr. White is trying to talk to me, probably about this week's episode of Bifocal. So in here, you know, these are things that matter to me, but to an executive, they want to see a dashboard. This is a report. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish this particular dashboard out to Power BI. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and take a look. Well, first things first, let's go take a look and see what I have in my workspaces first. Because inside of demos, I may already have one of these reports. And if so, I need to delete it. I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this report to Power BI in my demos workspace. And I'll explain workspaces here in just a minute as well. So while this is working, this is going out to Power BI. All right, so got it. Now I can click here and go open this in Power BI, but it's going to open the wrong workbook, or open the wrong place. So hey, look, Power BI, my data set is now ready. So I have a new data set. It will show up here as Customer Service Dashboard, and I have a new report. Now, if I were to come in here to reports, you'll see there's a little star next to it. So I can go ahead and click on this, And here you see I have the most up-to-date version. And I know that because I can actually come back in here and go change some of these numbers. I will switch this to 25%, and I will change this to 50,000, like that. And I'm going to save this, and just for funsies, I will come back over, and I'm not going to do it in here. I'm going to come over to Power BI, where I can go in and I can say, you know what, I want to do a refresh of this data set. And I can go in and either refresh it now, or I can check for a scheduled refresh. Now, the thing that I didn't show you guys is this particular workbook. This lives in this particular site. Open this, let's get a link, copy the path. I'm going to show you where this lives. That lives in a SharePoint Online document library. And there we go. You can see I've made the change in Excel, so it shows up in Excel Online. And now I can come back over here. That's already been done. I can come back to Power BI, and I could say, go ahead and do a refresh. I can also schedule a data refresh, but I'd have to do it using OAuth 2. Once I pass this in, of course, my cookie is probably expired at this point. Ah. That's why, huh? That's amusing. What we're going to do a quick bit of fun here, and I'm going to remove you, which will get rid of that report as well. And I'm going to do a quick republish from here, because what happened is it's looking at the wrong data set location. Because Jason is silly sometimes. So I'm having a little bit of demo fail, and because I'm running low on time, I'm going to do this slightly differently. There is a fun little bit of shenanigans that you have to do in order to get something like this working, which is actually to be able to come here and let me go back to the document library. I need to move this thing. Keeps getting in my way. All right, so if I come back to Jason's demos, it's going to give me a hard time. And this is only happening because I moved the location from earlier. And I want to go change the file location, which is now this guy. The problem is it gives you the guest access link, which is not the one that I want.
I absolutely hate that guest access link. I just want to link to the damn file. Such a pain.
It is. But the fun part is that because I've done this a number of times with the same silliness, I actually have a quick shorthand. And this is one of the things I was supposed to go off and blog this week. Oh. So in my demos site, this is actually now in a document library called Jason's Demos. Right? So there's the URL is sites demos Jason with no apostrophe, but a space between that and demos. So we're going to call this Jason's demos. That looks about right. Let's go back and hover over one more time.
Yep. Looks
All right. Isn't that fun?
Super fun.
If the cool part is that if I come back in here, I go back and edit that query, it'll actually pick it up properly.
Nice.
Come on. All right. So if I go back to the source, I can change this. Hey, look at that. And I know I have to do it on the other one as well, so I'm just going to make this change also, because it's two different workbooks. We'll apply and close. It's going to update, creating the new connections in the model. And then now, you can see Dynaco changed because the data in this guy has Dynaco at 100. We're going to change him to 25 just so that we can see if this works. Do a refresh. Should see Dynaco change. Nope. Are we at the right location?
Did the file get saved?
I'm in the wrong file. That's all. Don't you love it?
Oops.
Can't open the workbook with two of the same names. All right, so we close Excel. We come back in here and we open Excel. Jason's demos. I did warn you guys there would probably be a little bit of fail. Not in my own rig. All right, so we'll edit the workbook. We'll make our change. Save that off. Come back in here, check a refresh. Hey, see how quickly that works? And now if we go and do our publish, let's save our changes first. We'll go into that workspace. And we have some success. We come back in here, we take a look at Power BI. And now we have a customer service dashboard that shows with 25%. And again, if I want to come back in and make a change to here, whoop, I will go in and make the change here. Let's change that to 50,000, and we'll change this to 50%. We'll make a change to that Excel workbook. And here, without having to go in and make that change, I can come in to do a schedule refresh. If I edit my workbook, this guy actually should work. Look at that. I can go in and I can schedule this, and I can set this to be daily at specific times. So I could say, let's set this for 6:30 p.m., say apply, it'll update, but I want to do it now also. So I'm going to go ahead and say refresh it now. And if I come back over to the workbook, you'll see how quickly that changed.
So how long does that token last?
I believe it's 60 days.
Okay, but you have to know to go fix it, right?
Well, you'll actually get a message if when it fails.
Okay.
So I'm going to set this to 75 and 150 so that at 6:30 this will update. And so I'm going to set us up for some fun here. So that, as you can see, is all in Power BI though. That's how that works. So I worked with the design canvas here. This is Power BI Desktop. I went off and I was able to use Excel as an Excel workbook as an endpoint. Unfortunately, when you go to get data, you can't use Excel here to do that what I did. You actually have to use web in order to go against Excel Online. Again, I am going to get this blog post published this month about exactly how that works. But what I did for this one was I went in and I set it as basic. I gave it that URL here where the workbook is. And the fun part is that this is one of the original workbook URLs, right? So it's completely obfuscating. It's giving you this :X : /R for redirect to sites, demos, layouts, WAPI frame. This is the Excel file location. There's not a clean way of grabbing that info unless you do it exactly how I did. So the benefit of what you do with Excel here is doing it through the on-prem mechanism. So I can say go and get from Excel, and what it's going to do is it's looking on my local system. The problem with this is that when I publish, it doesn't have access to my local system anymore unless I run an on-prem data gateway from my local machine. So do we have any questions sitting here? Aha, there you go. Hi, Sandy. So I want to show you guys one other quick bit here, which is, I really hate that thing. I'm going to come over to this window. Wrong window, but that's okay. We're going to go to bifocal.himmelstein.org/reports. Yes, you all know my password is now all stars. So this is actually Power BI Report Server. And this is an on-prem implementation at Rackspace in our public cloud offering of a report server. And in here, if I go click into some of these, here you'll see I have Power BI reports, I've got mobile reports, I have paginated reports, and I have Excel workbooks. So each of these is actually a report that works. And if I go click into it, this is a report. Now, the fun of this is on-prem, but I can come over here to this other guy and go to my SSRS and SPO, and you can see this is that same report actually coming directly out of, using an iframe, coming directly out of my Power BI report server on-prem. So I can visualize on-prem reports in SharePoint Online. So this is Office 365 SharePoint Online being shared directly here. Now, one of the fun things, and the reason why I had Notepad open in the first place, is because if I come over to this one, that is a paginated, or sorry, that's a Power BI report, but here's a paginated report that I can just go change the iframe source to. And if I tab down, there's a paginated report from on-prem being rendered in SharePoint Online. And I can publish this, and this is now fully visible to anybody who has access to the SharePoint Online site. They can interact with this, they can go ahead and page through it, and they can work with this data, you know, whatever capabilities I've given to this particular report. Kind of cool stuff. Stuff you can't do in, you know, SharePoint, taking Power BI to SharePoint on-prem. You can do you can take some Power BI reports and embed them on-prem, but you can't do the same Power BI, dang it, there you go. You can't do the same Power BI rendering using Power BI in a SharePoint on-prem implementation. You have to use the Power BI report server in order to do it. So if I come here to pages, I should have a page that I did for an awesome demo in Seattle. We'll see if this wants to render. Doesn't look like it wants to. So we'll just go ahead and edit up. That particular content is not available. So we'll go ahead and edit the content. Or not, maybe we'll just delete that one. Fine, be that way. I will just go in and add a new Power BI web part, which is no longer in preview. I have to add a report, and I just need to go into Power BI and find the one I want to use. That one looks good. Grab the URL. I can also go and, I can grab, number of different ways. I can go grab the embed in SharePoint Online link. This gives me the right link, but personally I can just go grab it. So silly drop down thingy. And I'm just going to paste my report link here. If I tab down, I can decide, do I want page 1 or page 2? I'm going to choose page 1. I can choose to show the navigation pane or not. And you guys didn't see it was there. Here it is. So I can choose to hide that so you don't actually see that there is a page 2. I can come in and I can publish this right here. And now this guy will render on the page. Come on. There you go. And oh, by the way, we haven't seen it update yet, but in a minute that'll switch over to 75% as well. So a couple of other quick things, because I know we're right at 6:30, and I have a hard stop shortly, as I'm sure many of you do as well. Just for funsies, I want to do a refresh here. Hasn't quite refreshed yet.
Does anybody have any questions at all for Jason? You can put them in the window if you don't want to read them, and I can speak them.
So in order to render this SSRS and SPO page, there is some trickiness you have to do. You have to come up here to Site Information under under the gear and go into View All Site Settings. And you actually have to list in the HTML field security list the domain that you're coming from, that you're trying to be able to publish data from. Here you can see I have Himmelstein.org being able to be one of those that I'm publishing from. Otherwise, you get an error. So make sure that, and this is a site-by-site thing, because this is an HTML field security issue. Now, you can disable this at the root level and whatnot, but this is one of those things that you can go off and do as well. So let's go back here. I'm trying to think of the other thing I wanted to share with you guys. So I showed you some of the Power BI world. In here, the thing I didn't get a chance to do is to show you a dashboard. I will do that now. I'm going to add a page. The only way to actually create a dashboard element here is to come in here and be able to click on an item and be able to, sorry, I have to do it in Power BI. I can't do it here in the desktop. If I were to come in, I can come here and click on the pin this element to a new dashboard. I'm going to pin it to a new dashboard. I can pin a number of different elements here. And I'm going to pull one from page 2 as well. And I'm going to actually go into another report. Pin a couple of these other ones as well. To keep the current theme. So, as you can see, I'm pulling 3 different reports worth of things into a single dashboard. Now, I can go ahead and resize things in my dashboard as well. So I can say, you know what, that's all I need for this. I can move these things around and say, you know what, I want to pull this guy up. This is far more important than anything else. I want it to be bigger. And this guy I'm going to move up and come up here. So as an exec, I can come in and I can take a look and see what's been happening. How are my donations coming? By the way, Chris McNulty, really good at getting donations. Me, not so much. So But here, these are coming from different elements, and to Dr. Gilronan's question earlier, if I were to click on one of these things, is it going to interact with me? No, it's going to take me back to that element of that report. So that came from page 2 of that particular report, the customer service dashboard. And if I go back, I can come in and click on this guy. It's going to take me over to the donations report model. Okay, so I can see the things that I care about, and I can get to them by drilling in. And now I can come in here, and now I can click through and see what's actually happening with this. And if I do a refresh, is it going to pull my latest data? Doesn't look like it's pulled it. So I have to go in and take a look to find out what's going on. I will come in here and take a look at my refresh schedule. You know why? Because it was set for 6:30 on Central Time, which it just passed. So it says a refresh is in process, so it's doing the refresh now. So we'll see if that comes back here shortly and gives me the data that I'm looking for. It should happen very quickly. But hopefully that gave you at least a little bit of a tour of some of the Power BI coolness and all of the neat stuff that you can start to do both on-prem and in Office 365. I didn't bother to show you any of the on-prem specific stuff, but this was meant to be a quick overview of some of the neat, cool stuff. I want to see if there's anything really valuable to share with you from this part of the deck. The 2017 platform really does bring together Power BI Report Server, SharePoint Power BI, and Power BI Report Server really are getting on equal footing. SharePoint is designed now as a display platform for BI data, not a runtime platform. So the online story gets the same thing. Really cool stuff. And the idea behind this is to be able to provide context to the content that you're actually dealing with. Lastly, there's some really good stuff. We did this as a part of the podcast back in December. There's a technical reference implementation for enterprise BI and reporting for anybody who's got lots of money and is looking at how do these things scale up and scale out. This article did a really good job, and it's in the show notes for, I want to say it was episode 27. If you go out to bifocal.show, you can find the article, the technical reference implementation for enterprise BI and reporting, all the different things that make up BI in the Microsoft stack. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them for a few minutes. But Julie, thanks for asking me to do this.
No, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Jason?
No questions, but thank you, Jason, Julie, and Jim. It's awesome.
Oh, good. Glad you enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, definitely thanks, everybody, for joining us.
The pizza was amazing, by the way.
Thought you'd appreciate that.
I did.
Oh, that's lovely.
Jason, it's nice to have you back.
It's great to be back. I miss you guys.
Now that we can do this remote thing, maybe we'll have him back more often. So that will be fabulous.
I like this. I'd like to see you do it every month.
Yeah, I think we're going to do it every month. And as I said, I recorded it, so hopefully we'll start posting these out so that people can catch up if they want to. So, super awesome. And thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. We kind of almost had more people than we normally do at the store. So anyway, even though we'll do it online in months coming, for sure, definitely come and visit us. It's always fun to meet in person too and share some pizza and tell some stories. So we'll be back at it next month. I do not know what we're doing next month yet, but now that we know we can do this online thing, I have a plethora of people I can go bother to come do a talk. So if you have any ideas for topics that you'd like to hear more about, please drop a note on the meetup site or send me an email directly. I'll put my email address in the window, or reach out to Jim too, and I'll try to find somebody to speak on any topic that you'd really like to hear about. All right. So
real quick, Julie, before we break, just a couple of quick plugs for anybody who's looking for really great SharePoint events coming up. SharePoint Conference North America is going to be in Vegas in May. I believe, Julie, you have a discount code with your last name.
I definitely do. And
so Julie's going to be speaking.
Yeah,
it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm definitely speaking. So are you, right, Jace?
I am going to be speaking there. And then there's also the SharePoint Aluza conference in Branson. If you're looking for something to do in March, it's going to be amazing. It's the North American Collaboration Summit / SharePoint Aluza. It's going to be a blast of a couple days. And then, if I'm not mistaken, SP Fest is in DC in March, and then in August, SP TechCon is coming back to the Boston area.
Yeah, Boston.
So it's going to be really
SP
cool.
TechCon the week after SharePoint Fest in Seattle. So it'll be the I believe it's the 26th through the 29th or something like that. But yeah, it's back in Boston. So that'll be really cool. We'll definitely keep people posted when I get more official information about that. So.
Alrighty.
Yeah, great play.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, like I said, reach out.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.